Hi, in this video we are going to generate some random numbers to select a volunteer out of the class. Now since I don't have the class names yet, they're not final, I'm going to go out to the internet and get a list of the most popular names in the U.S. These are the 100 most popular names this year for babies in the U.S. and we are going to use them to select volunteers for class. So when class starts and nobody wants to raise their hand, I'll replace these with your names and we'll have a great way to get some volunteers. So random number is the first thing we're going to start with, and there's a function in Excel called rand. And if I do a formula text, you can see what function I just typed. Whoa, did you notice that when I typed that number changed? The random number was 0.44, but when I hit enter, goes to 0.43, and then if I come down here and say times 100, every time I do something in this spreadsheet, causing this spreadsheet to recalculate, that random number changes. That's going to be very important. So I'm going to take it. The random number, if you look at help or if you Google it, it gives you something greater than or equal to 0 and less than 1. So if you multiply that by 100, you'll get something that's greater than or equal to 0 and less than 100. Now, I have a list of names here, and I can't use all those decimals. So I'm going to truncate that. Let me show you what I did here. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to truncate that. And so if I get a random number of 0.29, multiply it by 100 and make it 29.4 something, and then I truncate all those decimals away, then I'm left with 29. So if this can be greater than or equal to 0 and less than 1, that means this can be greater than or equal to 0 and less than 100. But I don't have a 0th person on this list. Emma is number 1, and I want to use an index, so I'm going to add 1. Oh, it just happened to be nice. I got almost the highest number I could possibly get, and it gave me a 99. That's why I have to add 1 to get up to 100. Of course, when I hit enter, it changed the random number. So if any of this seems a little shady to you, take the time to go back and look at this. Otherwise, we're going to press ahead and use this index function that we used in the tax model. Go back and look at the tax model. It says if you'll look at an array and tell me which number you'd like off of that array, in this case C5, then I'll give you a name. So please hit pause, rebuild this in Excel, and get comfortable with why it works the way it does. This we could kind of think of as our input. The user's not inputting it. Excel is inputting it for us with a random, and this is kind of our output. So you can just imagine how fun it'll be back in class this fall, and I ask a question and nobody wants to answer, and I hit F9 and I say, Michael, would you please answer? And if he doesn't know, I'll hit F9 again and we'll ask Asher. So you see where we're going with this. Anything we can do to get Excel to recalculate will give me a new name here. And you knew I couldn't get through a video without a data table. Let's use a data table to convince ourselves that all this math is working. Okay, so our random number could be as low as 0, we said. Could be 0.01, could be 0.1, 0.5, 0.8, could be 0.99, could be 0.99999, but it can't be 1. So let's look at these possible sensitivities going into that cell. And let's see what we get. I'm just going to pull all of these out. Copy, Alt, HVSE for transpose down here, and paste them up here. And so this one goes here. This one goes here. If I'll hit tab, that'll go right instead of down. This one goes here, and this one goes here. And so we can see how this will work. Alt HJ, these are kind of outputs. I'm not going to go in and format those as outputs. I just want to run this and see how this works. Alt AWT tab because I don't have any row inputs, but I do have a column of inputs. And right now I want to see what would happen if the random number turned up 0 or 0.0001. So I'm going to put each one of those in this cell and see how my math works. And so when it was 0, then I multiplied it by 100 and it was still 0. I truncated, it was still 0. I added 1 and it became 1. And Emma was number 1 on the list. If the random number happened to come up 0.00001, multiplied it by 100, it would still be very small. So when I truncated, it would go to 0. There's no 0 person on this list, so that's why we add 1. And again, that would give us Emma. You can go through this math and get all the way up to 0.9999. We multiply it by 100 and truncate it. We're still only 99th on the list. That's why we add 1, so we have a chance of getting Leo. We don't want Leo to get off easy without answering any questions. And so now we have a student volunteer model. Let's say that I want to go ahead and run it before class 10 times. So instead of telling the random number, I'm pretty much determining who's going to be the volunteer in this case. But let's do something different. Let's say I wanted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 volunteers. Oops. And I don't want to put it in there because it's getting very confused when it sees these numbers that are bigger than 100. It doesn't know what to do. So let's rebuild this data table. Alt-A-W-T, tab. And instead of putting 1, 2, and 3 in this cell, let's put them out in this cell. I did that kind of quick, didn't I? So let's color it yellow or something. So I put a 1 in this cell, and what happened? Excel recalculated, gave me a random number that resulted, the random number times 100 was 1.34, so the random number originally must have been 0.013, and it made Liam the volunteer. But then when I put a 2 in this cell, it gave me a different random number and made Elizabeth the volunteer. And when I put a 3 in this cell, it gave me a different random number and made Audrey the volunteer. And so these truly are random. Hit pause and think through that. I'm putting my inputs in some cell that has nothing to do with my model. In fact, if it'd be easier, let's stick it over here. And let's see if it fixed that for us. N5, it did. So if we built that data table, Alt-A-W-T, and said put these things over here. So it's putting these numbers in a blank cell. That's why I call this data table in a blank cell. Only so it can recalculate the random number and give me a new name. Now, it's a little bit dangerous. It's not so bad since I colored it yellow. But what if I came over here and I were doing some other work? I could get myself in trouble if that became an important cell. So let me do this one last time. Let me do an Alt-H-E-A to delete all the format on that. Build this one last time. Where's one cell on this spreadsheet? If we were in class, I'd run my little model, I'd get a volunteer, and I'd say, Savannah, where is one cell on this spreadsheet that I know is always going to be a safe place? Hit pause and think about that. Looking for a cell that's never going to have anything else in it. Well, this cell is never going to have anything else in it. So when we do data table on a blank cell in this class, this is going to be our blank cell. And I will make an executive decision. I'll color it yellow. And when we see it being yellow, we'll know that we're running, that should say iterations. And we're putting the iterations right there. Doesn't change anything. It just causes a recalculation. Alt-A-W-T, tab, click that cell. And now every time I hit F9, I get a wonderful new group of volunteers. Now I want to point out just one last thing if it's not painfully obvious. I put 1 through 7 in here because it's an easy way for me to see how long my list is going to be. But I could have done apple, grape, banana, dog, pony, car, and sky. And so when I put the word apple in here, it's still going to calculate a random number because it could care less what's in that cell. All my whole model could care less what's in that cell. And so putting these words in there is no different to Excel than putting the iteration number in there. Either way, it's going to make it recalculate, but it's easier for me to do these. Now, actually, if I had a problem, if I wanted to say, I need a volunteer for a horizontal data table, I need a volunteer for a vertical data table, then I could actually use those for something more meaningful than iteration numbers. But you may realize by now, this is not really about me getting student volunteers. This is about us doing Monte Carlo simulation. So we will stick with the counting the iterations here. That is data table in a blank cell. In the next video, we are going to talk about, instead of finding a volunteer student, maybe we could sample a normal distribution, or a coin flip, or a roll of a die, or an uncertainty around an interest rate or something like that. So I will see you in the next video, Statistics Review.